The activities of daily living. The activities of daily living includes all the tasks that a child may use for self-care. It means how to take care of one's body. These tasks include dressing, eating, personal hygiene and grooming, bathing and showering, bladder, and bowel management. During maturation and growing up, the children learn how to perform the activity of daily living in socially appropriate ways. It means that the child have to learn how to engage in different occupations that includes the family community, such as school, play, leisure, social participation, and work. The activities of daily living are very important as a child learns problem solving, how to maintain and improve the body functions, including the health, strength, endurance, and coordination, and so on. As a child, task mastery are accomplished, it can lead the child to increase more self-esteem and more confident in himself. So, it improves the social and behavioral performance as well as independence. Several factors may affect the child performance. It includes the age, the gender, the level of education, the time the child is allowed to perform the task or free to perform a specific task, the motor development, the level of independence, the posture control, the pain, fatigue, the cognitive abilities, the memory, the attention span of the child, and perceptual abilities. The social environment around the child also affects the ADL performance. It includes the family members, the caregivers, peers, teachers. They can provide encouragement and support for the child, so decreasing gradually the level of assistance and supervision for ADL performance. And so on, the child will be more independent in performance of ADL activities. Another factor is the daily routine, which differs in different environments. For example, a child may learn how to go to a toilet at home, but it's completely different to perform the same task at school or in other communities. This variation in routine confuses the child or disorganize the children with intellectual disabilities or attention deficit disorders. Those children requires the same routine of the task, the same sequence of the task, the same steps of the task, and the same tools, and sometimes, if any of these changes, the child cannot perform the task appropriately. But in other children without attention disorders, sensory or cognitive problems, the variation of routine is a motivating factor for their performance. The cultural context also involved with the child performance. The family beliefs, thoughts, values, attitudes, the economic condition and financial supports, the opportunities for education and employment affect the child performance. For example, some families determine the child when to begin for self-dressing or feeding, bathing, going to bed, and become more independent. It means that in some communities, the parents perform all the tasks for the child, even in normal children. They give more support, more caring, and decrease the level of independence of the child performance. So the mother can dress the child for example, the age of 7, 8, 9, and 10 years of old. The bathing and toilet, the child is not allowed to perform these tasks by himself, even if a normal child. So this attitude affects the child's independence and self-esteem and confidence. Moreover, the availability of tools, equipments, and materials that the child uses to perform the ADL. And some children needs certain equipments or assistive technologies or assistive devices which cannot be used in certain communities for financial and economic conditions that affect the child performance. Also, the beliefs and values just like Muslim families from the Middle East may eat only with the right hand because their left hand is used for toileting. So it's important during dealing with these families to teach the child each task according to their beliefs and thoughts. So teach the child to eat with the right hand, Hawaii bathing, grooming, and other hygiene tasks are performed by the left hand. The physical environment includes barriers that affect the child performance, including inaccessible buildings, such as narrow doors or high stairs. The rooms crowded with furniture, the child with wheelchair cannot move through these furnitures, or the differences in surfaces such as smooth surface that the child cannot use his assistive devices during walking or during transition. Other factors including sensory aspects such as lighting, noise level, and temperature. For a child with autism, for example, the noise level makes the child uncomfortable and cannot perform the task, so he needs more quiet place for training. The visual context also affect the child performance and may be useful during teaching ADL activities. For example, video recording or tape recording, digital memo devices may be used to teach a child specific task. For example, toilet hygiene may be recorded as video or tape voice recording to tell the child the actual steps that he must perform during toilet hygiene. Another factor is the activity demands. As we said before, the demands of the activity vary in clinic, home, school, and community. For example, the child may learn how to master the toilet and hygiene at home, but he cannot perform this task at school or other places. So this variation may facilitate a child performance or impede the quality of performance of other children. So it's important to analyze objects used, the space and social demands around the child, the sequencing and time allowed for the child to perform this specific task, and the required actions and skills. Evaluation of ADL include interviews, observation, and using of assessment tools. The interviews are done with the parents, child, the teacher, the caregiver to ask about the child's abilities and how the child performance pattern, how he perform each task or skill, his habits and daily routine. It's also important to ask about the characteristics of the environment. The second step is observation of the child performance, how the child performed the task, including all the steps of the activity and the sequence and the level of assistance needed during performance. It's also important to observe the accessibility barriers and sensory characteristics of the environment. And finally, using valid and reliable assessment tools is very important. From the valid and reliable tools used for assessment is functional independence measure for children. It's important to know that this tool is available to be used in a child with physical disability only from age 6 months to 6 years of age. It's not appropriate for older ages. This instrument determines the amount of the caregiver assistance needed during the child performance. It assesses 3 domains, including the self-care, the mobility, and cognitive skills. The self-care includes how the child perform the following tasks. Includes eating, grooming, bathing, dressing, the upper and lower body, the toileting, bladder management, and bowel management. The assessment of motor and process skill is also a valid and reliable tool that has 83 possible tasks. The tasks are graded from easy to hard according to child performance. So it's useful to be used in children from the age of 3 years or older, and it can be used in most disabilities. Choosing options and accommodations for children is an assessment tool which is valid and reliable that assesses a child performance in other 4 domains, including the personal management, the community, home, and vocational performance. It's useful in children with age from 3 to 21 years. Initially, it was developed to assess children with moderate, severe, or profound disabilities, but recently it has been used in children with mild disabilities as well. The school function assessment measures the child function and performance in school setting compared to normal peer children. It assesses child participation in regular classes, special education classes, the playground, recess, transportation, bathroom and toileting, transitions, mealtime and snack time. It's important to observe and ask about these tasks exactly to be able to perform the assessments appropriately and grade the child performance in appropriate way. So it's used in children from 5 years to 15 years, including the years of education and school education time. The pediatric evaluation of disability inventory, it's a normative, valid and reliable judgment-based outcome measure which assesses the child performance either by caregiver interview to answer the questions or the steps of the tasks allowed. During training of ADL skills, several approaches are used. One of these approaches is the developmental approach. The developmental approach is based on the therapist to examine the underlying body structures and functions, including the strength, range of motion, the muscle tone, the postural control, the motor development, fine motor and gross motor developments. So it's important to assess these factors and to use these factors during the treatment approaches, so improve the body functions to improve the ADL performance. It's important also to determine the child chronological age and developmental age to be able to select the age-appropriate tasks by these factors. So, for example, during dealing with a child with hemiplegia, you want to facilitate the performance of the affected side. So, using constraint-induced therapy in which the non-affected side is casted or is fixed passively to force the child to use the affected side in performance. So the weaker side or the weaker upper extremity is used to restore the function of this affected side. Another factor or another example is during toilet and dressing training. You cannot teach the child to perform toilet activities or dressing activities or any of the ADL skills if the child have problems in motor development or in strength and range of motion. So it's important to improve the child motor abilities as motor control, coordination and strength to be able to teach him how to perform dressing activities or any of the ADL activities. Another approach is a motor learning approach. In this approach, the child learns to perform the task or a specific task through practicing the whole task in variety of activities. For example, during toilet training, it's not only toilet training, but it's also training for dressing and undressing skills. So during toilet training, the training schedule is directed to also improve the child to manage the clothes, as taking off or putting on pants. Another example, during dressing, the child learn how to control or to use assistive devices or orthotics. So to manipulate, don, or putting on and removing the assistive devices during toilet or during dressing and undressing skills. Another approach is the behavioral approach. In this approach, we may use backward chaining or forward chaining. The backward chaining means that the therapist or the mother or caregiver perform most of the task to the child. So the child perform only the last step of the sequence. This is used in children with low frustration tolerance or poor self-esteem. Because these children, if try one or more times and fail to perform the task, he will not be cooperative with you and he will not try again to to perform the task, as he failed already in 2 trials. So it's important to make him more cooperative by giving him the sense of immediate success or more encouragement by let him just to perform the last step of the task, so it gives him a sense of immediate success. So it's used in low frustration tolerance or poor self-esteem children. For example, during dressing, you have to pull up the zipper half the distance, for example, and let the child to complete the last part, or button some of the buttons and let the child to button the last 2 buttons or 1 button only. So it gives him the immediate feel of success that he accomplished the task, but actually he did only the last step. Gradually decrease this participation of you or assistance by decreasing the amount of assistance gradually, so the child at last perform the task from the beginning to the end. On the other hand, in forward chaining, the child begin to perform the task from the first step to last step by himself, but with verbal cues, instructions, giving him pictures, checklist, or tape recording, whatever the method you use to assist the child, giving him instructions, or even by manual assistance to assist him to complete the task from the first step to the last step. This approach forward chaining is very important for children who has problems in generalization of the task. So the child can learn each task in separate, but when he can perform the task as by himself, he cannot perform the sequence of the task as required. So he forgets some of the steps or cannot proceed from one step to another. So it's important to use the forward chaining to tell the child what he shall do in the following steps, using several methods, as using pictures. In this picture, for cleaning the hand, for example, the 5 steps are clarified to the child using this figure, which is very useful for children who has problems in sequencing and remembering or memory of the steps of the task required. So using this checklist is very important for those children. Another example for toilet steps, it's important also to use something like this schedule or this picture for the child to know what step follow the other, so he cannot forget or cannot pass one step without performing the actual or the required step at first. So it's important for those children to teach him the skill step by step as in this picture. For other methods for training in ADL, there is the adaptation of the task or modification of the task methods. For example, if you have a child who have problems such as congenital limb deficiency, in which a child is born with missing of one or more of his extremities. For example, in this picture, this child has upper limb congenital limb deficiency. The child learns to adapt to the method by changing his behavior during performance of the task by using his feet to perform the task, or to use his mouth to fix or open something during writing, dressing, or playing. Or some cases, they use prosthetic limbs or assistive devices to manipulate the objects. So it's an example for modification of the task method. Also, using assistive technology is important during treatment of ADL skills. In this part, we can use talking books, portable memory aids, just as checklists or voice-activated tape records, medication alarm bell boxes to remind the child with the specific task required and the specific steps of the task. For example, using alarms to teach the child the time needed to go to the toilet, or using voice tape or voice-activated tape records to teach the child while he is in the bathroom what is required from him, what is the first step and the following step to it. Another treatment approach is using assistive tools. The assistive tools are very common used in occupational therapy. just like bath seats, which is available to provide more stable and safe position during bathing. Also using assistive tools for dressing, such as zipper rings, button hooks, buttons with shanks, which is more easy to the child to grab it and to manipulate it, to use dressing sticks, to use socks and shoes with loops to make it more easier to the child to pull it or to take it off, or to put it on during dressing and changing his clothes. From the treatment approaches may use also the adaptation or modification of the work surface. The work surface, which is the environment or the actual environment in which the child performs the task, we may need to make structural changes by changing the ramps on entrances for children with wheelchair to make it more easier for him to move by the wheelchair on entrances, to use accordion doors, which is more easily to handle, using door handles and door loops for children who have weak or problems in grasp, and sometimes to modify the task itself by avoidance up and down the stairs, to use the stair lift, for example. In other approaches, we may use changing position to use a typical position to maximize a child independence. For example, we can use low technology devices as pillows or towel rolls, to use half technology devices as wheelchairs or orthotics, or to change the child position to an alternative position to help him to compensate for physical limitations as weakness and abnormal tone. For example, during dressing, if the child cannot perform the dressing tasks from standing position, use sitting position, use sitting on a chair. If he cannot maintain the position due to weakness or abnormal tone or lack of posture control, you can use alternative position by sitting on the floor. If he cannot assume the sitting position, use side-lying position as in the picture. So you eliminate all the gravity effect, and the child can perform the task more easily. The adaptation of the environment also are very important to make it easier to the child. A child can use or may use a bathroom, the closet, the kitchen, his bedroom, and all the spaces around him must be modified to make it more easier and more safer for him. For example, redecorating or modifying the environment to make the child more independent and more safe. Another approach is the anticipatory problem-solving approach, in which is called the preventive approach or safety approach. In this approach, the parents change the environment or use assistive tools to make it more safer for the child. For example, during bathing, use non-slip mats is important to cover the top facets to prevent the child from harming himself or get hurt, and using color codes to discriminate the cold from the hot water is very important also as anticipatory problem-solving approach. The following are some problems that needs to be addressed during treatment of a child with disability to make him more independent during performance of ADL activities. In a child who has low vision or hearing or both, we may need to use the intact or residual senses, such as tactile, sensation, or to use the visual if he has problem in hearing, to amplify the color and the size or the sounds during talking to the child, to decrease the auditory and visual distractions, and to use verbal cues at beginning and end of the task. For example, if you teach a child to wash his hands or hand hygiene, and he has problems in vision, you have to use verbal cues to teach the child the steps and to make him more independent. So at the beginning, you have to start each step by verbal instructions, just as open the water, take the soap, wash your hands, close the water, and dry your hand. So you used the verbal cues at the beginning and at each step and at the end of the task. But gradually try to decrease these verbal cues until the child performs the task independently. If you deal with a child with tactile defensive or hypersensitivity, you may use to change some of the physical characteristics of the environment, such as lighting, to decrease the light or to make it more comfort to the child, to decrease the sounds and noise around him. You may use deep pressure done by the therapist, the caregiver, or the child himself to touch his parts of the body to as a preparation for the treatment, to use tactile preferences, so give the child the choices about the texture of the material of clothes or toys he prefers during the training, and to wear snug clothes or loose clothing. It means that avoid to dress the child with tight clothes, especially at the neck and at the sleeves, because those children do not like tight clothes. So give him more loose clothing is preferable. If the child cannot find the clothes top, front or bottom, you may use some cues such as figures or pictures in front of the t-shirts, to use visual cues such as pictures or simple words to discriminate the right from the left shoes. A child with balance problems, you may need to make more support to the child by positioning devices, high technology devices or low technology devices, as we mentioned before. You may change the position of the child to more alternative functional position, for example, lying on the floor during dressing or during undressing activities. And finally, you can change the position of the activity. Make the tools more near to the child to avoid his disturbance of balance during reaching or trying to reach to grab the tools. So, for example, in toilet, make all the tools that the child needs, as tissue papers, the soap, the toothbrush, and so on, more near to the child. So you have changed the position of the activity to more safer and more functional position to the child. A child who has limited reach or problems in reaching, you may use long-handled, so build up handled long enough to decrease his effort during reaching for the task. To change also the position of the task is important. Using reachers or grabbers is very important, so you decrease the amount of the effort by the child to grab or to reach for some tools. A child with difficulty in grasp, you may build up handles such as spoon or the toothbrush, or using loops for door openings, to use grabbers, or to stabilize the objects with other body parts, such as a child with congenital limb deficiency, as we mentioned before. A child who has weakness with little endurance, it's important to use lightweight objects to make it more effective for him or more easier for him to perform the task. To use power equipment such as powered wheelchair is very important, and to eliminate the gravity effect by performing the task while inside lying position. On the other hand, children with difficulty control the movement, you can use a stable position such as the floor is important. To use weighted devices, increase the weight of the tools that we use is important to provide the child with proprioceptive stimulation, which improves the child controlling on the movement. And also to eliminate the need for fine control is important. For example, avoid the zippers and buttons by using the pullover. To use zipper pulls or zipper rings decrease the child need for fine motor control skills, and so on. In dealing with a child with poor memory, you should use fixed routines and sequences of the task. You should use visual cues, verbal cues. It's important to use real-life materials, using backward chaining and forward chaining approaches, To use partial participation and grading techniques. It means that you make the child to perform the task with assistance, and gradually you decrease the level of your assistance until the child masters the task by himself. During treatment of a child who becomes easily frustrated, it's important to identify the purpose. Does the child escape, avoid the performance, have problems in attention, have problems in memory, have problems in obtaining a new task, have problems to transition from one step to another step? It's important to analyze the antecedents and consequences. So the child must be given choices during his training to perform the preferred task, to use the preferred tools or preferred clothes, materials during dressing and undressing training. So give the child the choices to perform the task as he wishes. It's important to use partial participation at the beginning, such as in backward chaining. Gives the child the ability to perform the last step of the task, so give him the sense of immediate success, which make him more comfortable and more cooperative, and gradually decrease the level of your assistance to the child. It's important to use reinforcements. It's important to gradually fading the prompts or the cues you use with the child. If you use verbal or visual cues, you have to gradually decrease these cues and make the child to build up his memory and to remember the steps of the task by himself. And it's important to generalize the activity from your situation in the clinic to the other communities, such as training the child buttoning and unbuttoning on tools or on maquettes. It's important to teach the child how to do this on his own clothes during dressing and undressing skills. To adapt the work surface, we may need to make modifications, such as at bathroom. You may need to use door ramps, accordion doors, to build up handles for the bathtub or toilet seats, to change the position of the activity more closer to the child to decrease his reaching or disturbance during performing these skills. To use other tools such as single lever facets is more easier to the child. To use hand dryers instead of towel, regular towel. To build up handles and to make liquid soap is very common used in those children. For bedroom modifications, we may use structural changes, to use assistive devices, or to modify the task itself. The structural changes to use enlarged space, to enlarge the doors, openings, to use closet storage with shelves, avoid other complicated structures. To use at low and medium height shelves is very important for children who use wheelchair, for example. To use assistive devices such as bed rails, to use environmental control units, remote controls for the TV, the radio, the light accesses, and so on. To use large drawer handles or use loops to make it easier to open and close the drawers. To positioning devices and adaptive chairs are important. Modifications of the task by using open shelves, to keep most used clothes in accessible drawers at low and medium heights. As in these pictures, use open shelves is very easier for the child. To make closet modifications is very important. To build up large drawers handles or to use loops is important. To make all the task requirements that child needs at low and medium heights, such as low shelves and cupboards. For kitchen modifications, the same structural changes are used. To use sliding doors, organizers in the cabinets, to use enlarged space, lowered countertop, lowered cabinets are very important. Using front opening washing machine is important. To modify the task by using low cupboards, more accessible surfaces, to hang all the poles and the pans on the wall instead of storing in cabinet, and to eat in lap tray instead of the large table, which is more difficult to the child to perform this task on the big table. For example, these are pictures clarifying the modifications in kitchens that the child may require to be more independent, such as sliding drawers, larger drawers handles, organizers inside the drawers to make all the tools organized and easily accessible, to hang the poles and the pans on lower levels. To use the lap tray is more preferable for those children instead of sitting on the dining table. To train a child toilet hygiene, bladder and bowel management, the child starts at 18 months to sit in the toilet when you place him in the toilet under supervision for only less than 5 minutes. By the age of 4 to 5 years, the child becomes more independent in toilet skills, using toilet paper, flushing the water, wiping and cleaning himself, washing the hands, and managing his clothes by putting on his clothes again. During training for toilet hygiene, you have to use the neurodevelopmental approach by modulating the muscle tone, improving the muscle strength and coordination, improve fine motor and gross motor skills. We may use visual pictures or checklists such as forward chaining, as we mentioned before. You have to use the same routine for toileting. For example, when he gets up in the morning, after meals, before getting out, and before sleeping. This is example for forward chaining, for hand hygiene, and for toilet hygiene. In some children, we have to use task analysis, in which you break down the major task into several steps and teach the child each step as separate in the same sequence, so the child can master the task as a whole by the end of the training period. You may have to modify the bathroom by increasing the door width, accordion door, grab bars, using safety rails. For small children or young children and toddlers, you may use potty chairs on the floor instead of the toilet seats, which is more higher for him and more unstable. Using easy accessibility to the toilet paper, towels, and soap, as we mentioned before, to change the task position by making these tools in front of the child or more near to the child during performance. It's important to teach the child the social and cultural issues regarding the toilet hygiene, about the privacy, only you touch your body unless catheterization training, leave a space between you and others, and be quick and leave as soon as possible when you are finished. These are basic when the child uses toilets in other communities other his home. For self-dressing management, the child starts to cooperate with dressing at the age of 12 months, but at age of 6, the child becomes able to close the back zipper, to button the back buttons, and to tie his shoes. During training a child on dressing, you may use hand-over-hand technique. You must use easiest clothes. You can use tools to teach the child to tie or button or use zippers. You may use backward chaining or forward chaining. You may use pictures to identify the front from the back of the t-shirt or the clothes. You have to teach the child to put on his weak or affected side first. If the child cannot use dressing and undressing while standing, you may use a chair or grab bar. If he cannot use more stable surface, such as sitting on a chair, if he cannot maintain this position, you have to use lying on the floor and teach the child to roll from one side to another side during changing his clothes. We may modify the garments, such as using larger size than the child, to use loose materials or stretchy materials, to use elastic waist bands, to use dressing sticks to allow the child to perform the task independently, Start the child training with short sleeves rather than long sleeves. You must use larger heads and armholes sleeves, and we may eliminate the need for fine motor, eliminating the buttons and zippers, and use blower instead of zippers or buttoning. To modify the buttons, you have to use large buttons, use buttons with shanks as in the picture, use buttons and holes with the same color. You have to color each button regarding his next or his opposite hole with the same color to make it more easy to the child to align these buttons. Use front buttons before the side or back buttons. Sew on loosely. You may sew the buttons more loosely to make the child able to grab it and move it during the buttoning. You may use the button hooks, or you may eliminate the need for fine motor by using blower. And it's important to allow the child to learn how to align the buttons or align his clothes by using buttons first. In this example, the child starts buttoning from the bottom, not from the top of the clothes. So start from the last button and gradually ascend until the first button is closed. You may need to modify the zippers by using longer zippers. It gives the child more space to move and to manipulate the zippers. To use the front zippers at first rather than the sides or the back zippers on his clothes. You may need zipper pulls or zipper rings to make it more easier to the child to handle the zipper. Modifying the socks, you may use larger size, using stretchy and loose materials, using tube sock which does not have the part for the heels, using ankle socks, meaning you start with short socks rather than long short socks, using loops to make it easier to grab and pull the sock up, using dressing sticks is important. You may also need to modify the shoes by using slip-on shoes, using adhesive straps rather than tying, using elastic laces which is already closed so the child do not have to tie the shoes, using loops as in the picture to make it easier to the child to put on the shoes, or using dressing sticks. During bathing or showering training, the child show interest in bathing by the age of 2 years. By the age of 8, he can independently prepare the bath and shower water. It's important to use the neurodevelopmental approach, as we mentioned before, by improving the muscle strength, coordination, posture control, modulating the muscle tone before training. Using warm bath is important to decrease the tonicity and increase range of motion. It's important to use the forward chaining and in this picture to teach the child the steps of the bathing skills. Dealing with a child with tactile hypersensitivity is critical, so you need to use deep pressure approaches to prepare the child before training. Avoid the soap to enter the eyes. Adjust the water flow. Adjust the water temperature. Avoid shower spray because it's more irritative to the child, and use warm baths is important. We sometimes need assistive devices regarding the bathing and showering as non-slip bath mats, using grab bars to make it more safer to the child, cover the facets to avoid injuries, and mark the facets by blue and red colors for the cold and hot water. For personal hygiene and grooming skills, if the child have oral hypersensitivity or tongue thrust or gag reflex, you may need to use a small soft brush. If a child has limited dexterity, to use the electric toothbrush. If the child has weakness, this electric toothbrush is too heavy to handle, so you need to use the regular brush. For a child with weak grasp, you have to build up handles. You may need to use hand-over-hand techniques as in the pictures. You may need verbal cues. It's important to use the same routine sequence of the task to make the child remember and build up memory for each step of the task used. Gradual fading of cues is important, so gradually decrease your supervision and your assistance to the child to make him more independent, and the child has to learn about self-maintenance tasks such as skincare, hairstyling, and hair removal or cosmetics. Thank you.
Bear and I'm 6. I have arthrogryposis.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to get my shirt off with this.
All right, let's see it. Ta-da!
See?
Awesome. Here, can you show us how you can put this one on now?
Yep.
So this is a dressing tree that OT made for him. And I will attach some pictures so you can get a better look at it. But it's a pretty simple thing. It goes over the door. And there's actually Velcro on the other side of the door. Don't forget to look at where the front of the shirt is. Nice. And Bear figured out how to use this all by himself. We practiced a little bit with OT, but it was really just letting him play with it to figure out the best way that he could use it. Just the other day, he figured out how to get his shirt on.
Yeah. It's easy too. It's an easy way too.
Oh, you go from that side?
Mm-hmm.
He's done it both ways.
My arm in the arm, and then I put the other arm into the other arm. And then I get my head in. Sometimes when I put my head in, I find the spot where I'm supposed to get it. And then you wiggle your head a little bit, and then you get it, and then you have to get your shirt off the hooks.
Good job, buddy.
That's how it's done. So, bye.
This surgery has allowed me to do so much more than I expected, and I would never go back and change it.
"14-year-old Gabby Shull looks like any other dancer in her class, but at the age of 9, she had her right leg amputated at the knee after being diagnosed with bone cancer.
Whenever I knew I was going to get my leg amputated, well, the first goal was to get walking and just get out of the hospital bed. But what motivated me to walk was dancing again.
Thanks to rotation-plasty surgery, Gabby has been able to get back on her feet.
So the surgery, rotation-plasty, what they did is they removed my cancer, which was in my lower femur/knee, and they removed my whole knee and took my lower tibia and rotated it 180 degrees backwards and reattached it to my upper thigh area. And now my ankle acts as a knee joint. It lets me do things that I might not have been able to do with other surgeries, like dancing or cheering or climbing, ice skating.
I knew Gabby before she had cancer, and watching her go through this journey to become the amazing dancer she is has been really amazing.
Gabby first realised there was a problem after a skating accident.
I went ice skating with one of my friends, and I fell and hurt my knee and had an MRI, and that's when they found the cancer.
We went to the doctor, and he told us the news. He said, your daughter has what we think could be cancer, a type of cancer called osteosarcoma. We were shocked. He had to repeat what he said because I didn't believe him. I didn't think my ears heard him correctly. She asked, why does this happen to me? And we said, sometimes bad things happen to good people. We don't know why, but we just have to do our best to get through it. And that's what we did.
The recovery process was difficult, but a year after surgery, Gabby was able to take her first steps.
It took several PT sessions, just getting the motion back in my ankle and taking my first steps without any assistance, no walker or crutches. And then a year after that, I was dancing again on stage.
Now she is dancing competitively again.
Gabby never really sees anything as an obstacle. She doesn't turn down a challenge or say that she can't do anything.
When I think of Gabby, I think that she's really strong and inspirational.
We all are extremely proud of Gabby for everything that she's, because she's done so much more than anybody's ever expected.
Gabby currently volunteers for a children's cancer charity and hopes to continue to help children with cancer in the future.
I do work with the Truth 365, which is an organization to help raise awareness for childhood cancer, and I'm their national spokesperson. When I'm older, I would like to be a pediatric oncologist or nurse, or one of the scientists that finds a cure for cancer. If I could beat cancer and have a prosthetic leg and learn to do everything again, then I can do anything.
Good job. Pull. Good job. Good job. Enough. Give me 5. Good job.
How to put on a t-shirt. 1. Pick up the shirt by the bottom. 2. Place the shirt over your head. 3. Put your head through the top hole. 4. Put your arm into a sleeve. 5. Put your other arm into the other sleeve. 6. Pull the bottom of the shirt over your belly. You cannot go out until you put on your pants.
This is the tough part for you. Good. Okay. Pull. 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 Good job. I would dress her right arm first. Okay. Reach. 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 Reach that arm in. Reach. Reach. Good job. Reach. Reach. Good job.
Okay, now we're going to have a look at some hints and tips to make getting dressed a little easier. Often if people have a bit of stiffness or pain, particularly in their hips, their knees or their shoulders, getting dressed can be quite painful and quite uncomfortable. So there's a few simple bits of equipment available on the market which takes some of the strain out of that. So first, Brenda, I'm going to get you to use the sock aid. Okay, there are a variety of different types available, but this is a fairly simple one to use. So the idea is that you pull your sock onto the sock aid. So once the sock's in place, as you've demonstrated, you take the ends of the long straps, so that allows you to drop your sock to your foot without the need to bend, pop your foot in, and just pull on the straps, which will pull the sock in place, and the sock aid will come out the back, allowing you to lift it off at an appropriate height. So now you have your sock in place, the next thing we would want to do is perhaps put our shoes on. Now we can use a long-handled shoe horn, which would make the process of getting your shoes on a little easier, again without having to bend down. So using the shoe horn, pop your foot in. Now these shoes have Velcro on them, so what you can use is a thing called an easy reach. This has lots of different uses, but it can certainly be helpful for a number of aspects of getting dressed, and one of those is fastening the straps on Velcro shoes. We'll just catch the end and just push that across, and that's now firmly attached. Also available, if you have lace-up shoes, you can get elastic laces. So again, that would basically turn your shoes into slip-ons. You could use your long-handled shoe horn, and that takes out the need to bend down to tie your laces. Now, Brenda, we're going to look at dressing your top half. If you have some restriction in your shoulder or elbow movement, or you've got poor grip, then there are just a couple of pieces of equipment, a few techniques that can make that a bit simpler. The first one is to look at if you have one arm that is weaker than the other, particularly say if you've had a stroke, then to dress that side first is a lot easier. You can then use your stronger arm to help pull it up and over as such. Okay, and then you will be better able to reach round with that arm. What you can then do is you can use a dressing stick, which you can then use the hooked end to just catch the back of the cardigan, again using the arm which has more movement, or you could use your easy reach again. And then you obviously then have more movement in that arm to be able to put that on. Okay. Again, to take it off, it can be useful to use the dressing stick just to push the garment over your affected shoulder. That's it, and just hooking it round. Perfect. Okay. Another area of difficulty that people often have, particularly if they've got limited movement in their hands, if they've got arthritis, can be doing buttons. It's the small fiddly items. So a simple piece of equipment which can help with that is an item called a button hook. A little bit like a kind of crochet hook, really. The idea is that it pops through the buttonhole, you catch the button and pull it through. That's so. And equally it can be used for undoing the button. It's just the reverse of the procedure. So this time we're catching the button and pop it through the hole.
At Easy Access Bathrooms, we remodeled this complete bathroom. Installed the fixtures, we have travertine, 12x12 travertine, 2x2, 3x6, stainless steel grab bars. We have the pivot down shower seat, another grab bar, the recess, the handheld shower head, and the faucet control. Another grab bar, the caddy corners. Also we have the standard shower faucet. We have the brushed nickel shower curtain rod, heavy duty. The grab bars pivot up and out of the way. Rated at 1,000 pounds. We have the high-rise coder commode, anti-bang seats. We have the countertop. We have the lavatory sink. And this is free for the wheelchair. The sink comes over 3 inches. A high-rise faucet. It is out of the way. With a drain on the edge. Paper mirror. Sconces. Toweling. Paper dispenser. Towel bars. Rope hooks. And hooked shower curtain. We have a barrier-free access into the shower for easy access with a walker or wheelchair. This is another beautiful bathroom by easyaccessbathrooms.com.
Díky kuchyňskému studiu Válek a Kačena mám skvělou linku pro invalidy. Děkuji.